Welcome to Anti-Woke and Autistic. Fat acceptance influencers have a tendency, well, actually, it's a lot more than a tendency, to totally blow things out of proportion. And I mean, really blow things out of proportion, like Abby here on TikTok.
We need to stop equating health with moral virtue. They are two different things. The New York Times just put out the
All right, so she first starts out by saying we need to stop equating health with moral virtue. Abby, would you mind telling me just who is equating health with moral virtue? I don't know anybody who equates health with moral virtue. When doctors tell patients you need to lose weight because they never explain anything about moral virtue or anything that's similar or synonymous with moral virtue. They explain things about heart disease, heart attacks, cardiac events, diabetes, high blood pressure, stroke, and all those horrible things. They never say anything about moral virtue. Where do you get this moral virtue thing? Is it suggested or implicated to you by magazines or by what you see on TV? Well, then that's in your imagination, Abby. Let's continue here.
article about the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, and I opened it in an incognito tab so I wouldn't get a bunch of weight loss shit advertised to me.
All right, in case you didn't catch that, she said that she opened up the article in an incognito tab so that she wouldn't get a lot of weight loss ads thrown at her. So if she's happy being overweight, if she's truly into fat acceptance, why is she offended or unsettled by the idea of getting a bunch of weight loss ads thrown at her? Thrown? When's the last time you were inundated or felt inundated by weight loss ads? I've never been inundated with weight loss ads. I'm sure there's a lot of them out there. I mean, it's all about advertising. There's a lot of ads about financial stuff. I mean, there's all sorts of ads out there, and weight loss is one of them. So what? What's the problem if you don't want to look at a weight loss ad? Don't look at it. Now, the only problem that I have with ads is when they block the content. I don't care what the ad is. If it blocks the content or if ads keep popping up blocking the content and I've got to click out of them, that's when ads become a problem. But she had to go into an incognito tab so she wouldn't see in her peripheral vision or even straight on, whatever, wherever the ad shows, an ad about weight loss. That's how much it bothers her. That's how much it upsets her. So if she's really into fat acceptance, if she's really, truly deep down inside happy with the decision to stay fat for the rest of her life, why do weight loss ads bother her so much that she had to go into an incognito window?
Because I was curious about it, and I feel like I eat kind of close to this, so I wanted to feel like I was doing something right, if I'm being honest. This is what it says in the subheading. It has become the bedrock of virtuous eating. I'm sorry, healthy and virtuous are not the same thing.
I'm sorry, but virtuous eating is not the same thing as a virtuous person. You see how she's twisting things and turning apples into oranges and just warping things? And vulnerable, easily manipulated people who watch this kind of stuff, they fall for that. They're very suggestible. They fall for that. Virtuous eating, the concept of virtuous eating, has nothing to do with a person's personality, what's inside them as far as their person, their humanity. Virtuous eating simply means healthful eating, smart eating, good eating, wise eating, mindful eating. But she's completely changing the meaning. She's twisting things. And unfortunately, a lot of women fall for this.
Those are two different concepts. Yes, this diet is healthy in the sense that studies show it can reduce the risk of things like heart disease. Does that make it virtuous for you to reduce your personal risk of heart disease? What does that have to do with how good of a person you are?
It has nothing to do with how good of a person you are, but where is she getting the idea that the article even says that or even implies that? Again, she's making this all up.
I don't care if somebody is a whole ass hedonist as long as they are not harming others. That should be the measure of moral virtue. And often, talking about health as something virtuous leads to gatekeeping health for poor people, for fat people, for black people, for anybody who's like marginalized or disenfranchised or may not have as much.
What does Sam Hill does race have to do with any of this? As for people not having access to healthy food, we live in the United States here. We don't live in some desert in a faraway country or something like that. There's food everywhere. If it's not in your immediate neighborhood, it's within a few miles. Hey, if you have to walk a few miles to get healthy food, like a sack of beans, sack of potatoes, rice, vegetables, maybe you need to walk. If you're overweight, you need to walk. Find a bicycle. Where there's a will, there's a way. Obesity is the product of overconsumption, not poverty.
Access to healthy foods or medical care. So actually, that's not virtuous. Being healthy in itself is not virtuous. Treating other people well, advocating for them, and trying to create a more just world.
How do you go from the definition of virtuous as far as behavior, treating people well, making the world a kinder place? How do you go from an article about the Mediterranean diet and virtuous eating to making the world a better place and being a kinder person? How do you get from A to Z like that? Again, fat acceptance influencers are notorious for making mountains out of molehills, for turning apples into oranges, for going way out into left field.
That's what's freaking virtuous, New York Times. I am so fucking tired of this idea that food has inherent moral virtue. It doesn't. Lots of conflicting studies show that different foods have different levels of like healthy potential benefits, and nothing is set in stone because we also have genetics and lifestyle factors like how much access you have to fresh fruits and how much medical care you have on your freaking insurance and stuff like that. There are so many confounding factors to health that it's really unfair to measure it in terms of moral virtue because people just can't control it that much. You maybe can to an extent, but a lot of times you can't even do the things that would be in your control.
Portion control is in your control, regardless of your economic status, your work schedule, or where you live. Portion control, the law of thermodynamics, calories in versus calories out, which is why there are people who have lost weight with portion control of junk food like McDonald's. So if you don't have easy access to fruit or fresh vegetables, that's no excuse for being fat.
Because of your schedule or because of your work or because of your economic status. Health is more available to the privileged, and equating it to moral virtue means moral virtue is more available to the privileged. It leads to the idea that poor people are bad and they are morally bad, and that's why they're poor and that's why they're unhealthy. Hold the fuck on. It's 2024. We're not doing this anymore. And from a mental health perspective, stopping equating food to moral virtue didn't change the way that I eat that much, but it changed radically the way that I think about myself and the way that I talk to myself.
So if Abby has it all together, why did she use an incognito tab to avoid the weight loss ads? Deep down inside, she knows the truth. The truth is, number one, doesn't matter where you are or how much money you have, don't overconsume. Number two, exercise. You don't need to have money to exercise. Did you know that Planet Fitness, and there seems to be a Planet Fitness just about everywhere these days. I think it's like 25 or 30 bucks down, and then the basic membership is 10 bucks a month. I can't believe these influencers can't afford that. You look at poor people, people who are truly poor, somehow, some way, many of them, I'm not saying all, but many of them are getting a hold of cigarettes, junk food, soda, liquor, even drugs, pot. Come on. It's all about priority. Take $10 worth of soda and chips and spend that every month on Planet Fitness. You don't need a $100 pair of Nikes to jog or go fitness walking. You could get basic exercise equipment as far as resistance training off of Amazon. You could get a pair of dumbbells for 15 bucks, 20 bucks. The heavier they are, the higher the price, 30 bucks. Again, fat people who claim they're too poor to eat healthy, they'll blow 30 bucks very quickly on junk food. Do a comparison search on Google. $20, put this in the search engine, $20 of junk food versus $20 of healthy food, and you'll see a lot of results, and you'll see the amount of junk food you can get for 20 bucks. Side by side, you'll see the amount of healthy food or not as junky food you can get for 20 bucks. And there's a lot more food in the healthy food group than in the junk food group. There's a lot more. A set of tension bands for resistance training on Amazon. I think that's like 15 bucks. If you have a staircase in your house, you could go up and down nonstop, up and down for 10 minutes or however long you can tolerate. Add on to that so that after several weeks, you're doing 20 minutes nonstop instead of 5 minutes or whatever. You can climb the steps two at a time. You can do lunges. You could do on the steps. You could walk up and down the steps holding a pair of light dumbbells. If you have only one or two steps in your house, you could do step aerobics with your staircase, if you have only like one or two steps. There's no excuse for not exercising. You could do squats in your house. You don't need a fancy gym to do squats. Actually, you don't need a fancy gym at all. Like I said, you could, for $10 a month, you could get a membership at Planet Fitness. But what if a cheap gym like that isn't near where you live? Well, maybe there's a recreational center. They are relatively cheap. You can use a nearby park for some exercising. You could do push-ups against your countertop, your kitchen countertop. You could do push-ups against your kitchen countertop. You could buy many exercise and workout implements off of Amazon. You don't have to buy them all at once. You could buy them every few months if you're really literally dirt poor. Amazon has a non-interest payment plan. I've never used it, so I don't know the details. I just know that they have some kind of payment plan where they give you 3 months to make a payment, interest free, I believe. So unless you are literally like living in a wood shack in the mountains somewhere and you don't have any money coming to you except whatever your relatives could afford to send you. I mean, if you get a small income every month off of some kind of program or something and you're like literally completely dirt poor, unless you're like that in that situation, there is no excuse for not working out and there's no excuse for overeating, overconsumption. It's about calories in versus calories out. Even if all you have, in theory, okay, let's just say hypothetically, the only kind of food you have access to, or the only kind of food you could afford, let's just say hypothetically, is junk food, fast food, things like that. If you don't overconsume those foods, if you don't overeat, and if you work out intensely doing weight bearing exercise as well as cardio, you will lose weight. It's not about getting skinny thin, it's about losing unhealthy amounts of excess body fat. It's all about priority. Don't say you don't have time to exercise. You have time for TV, you have time for social media, you have time for video games, you have time for exercise. Well, anyways, that is my video for today. Have an incredible day.